nice conversation. So without further ado, I'd like to start out by sharing a poem. And this poem will bring relevance to the title of why I chose my title and chose to speak on the topic in which I did. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and give you a quick poem by Mrs. Maya Angelou. Share. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
correct. Cool. So the poem is called Continue. Continue, a poem by Maya Angelou. My wish for you is that you continue. Continue to be who you are and how you are, to astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness. Continue. To allow humor to lighten the burden of your tender heart. Continue. In a society dark with cruelty, to let people hear the grandeur of God in the peals of your laughter. Continue. To let your eloquence elevate the people to the heights they had only imagined. Continue. To remind the people that each is as good as the other and that no one is beneath nor above you. Continue. To remember your own young years and look with favor upon the lost and the least and the lonely. Continue. To put the mantle of your protection around the bodies of the young and defenseless. Continue. To take the hand of the despised and the diseased and walk proudly with them in the high street. Some might see you and be encouraged to do likewise. Continue. To plant a public kiss of concern on the cheek of the sick and the aged and infirm, and count that as natural action to be expected. Continue. To let gratitude be the pillow upon which you kneel to say your prayer, nightly prayer, and let faith be the bridge you build to overcome evil and welcome good. Continue. To ignore no vision which comes to enlarge your range and increase your spirit. Continue. To dare to love deeply and risk everything for the good thing. Continue. To float happily in the sea of infinite substance which set aside riches for you before you hide a name. Continue. And by doing so, you and your work will be able to continue eternally. A poem by Maya Angelou. I'd like to start this presentation and conversation off tonight with a question of why do you think I chose that poem? What is the significance of it? There's no right or wrong answers. I'm really big on engagement as well. Anybody?
I'll break the ice. I would say because of the continue piece, the idea of pushing forward is something that resonated with me. So I would assume.
Absolutely. Any students like to chime in? No right or wrong answers.
I mean, me personally, I interpreted a lot of like adversity through tough times, and especially at this time in my life, it's very helpful to hear that poem.
Absolutely. And the reason I chose it is because the title of my story today that I wanted to choose, and when you're going through the process of crafting a presentation, crafting a speech, you always have to identify what is the message that I want to get across. And I chose never quitting, the power of moving forward. And to my young man, Ray's point, young adults, you're at a pivotal time in your life. You are trying to identify who you are, what you want to be, assimilating through the collegiate process. And there's a lot of adversity comes to that matriculation process from freshman year to senior year. Your growth is insurmountable to what you could far imagine. And it doesn't just stem in the classroom. It deals with personal life, home life. And then you have to try and combine all of these things to continue to push through. So I chose the topic in the presentation tonight because when I was your age and I went through the collegiate cycle as well, there was a tragic situation that happened to me. And it gets to why I chose the title, Never Quitting, the Power of Moving Forward. It was October 9th, 2009, and it was about 12 a.m. And when I say 12 a.m., it was, later in the evening hours, early morning. And if you think, college students, some of us may be up, some of us may be asleep, and my phone rings, and I'll never forget it. The voice on the other end of the phone, they kept asking, "Hey, are you busy? Are you busy?" And I couldn't fathom, you're calling me at 12 o'clock and you're asking me, am I busy? It's like, hey, I'm either asleep, I'm chilling out at the house, I'm not, too much is going on. But the next words that person on the other end of the phone uttered, and his name was Kenny. Kenny shared with me that my brother had just been murdered. I was a second year sophomore at Murray State University, and hearing a phone call like that was the course altering point in my life. You know, I was in school, I was there, not really there with a purpose just yet. You know, I had changed majors a couple times, and the moment I got that phone call, for me, moving forward was the furthest thing on my mind. I spent about 2 weeks away from campus, and I give a lot of credit to my mother because when it was time to go back to school, I immediately uttered, "No, I'm not going back." And my mom's like, "Yeah, you're going back." So me in the position that I am today, I give my mom a lot of credit, and I need to tell her more frequently about that because without her, moving forward would have not been the furthest thing. So October 9th, 2009 happens. I go through the process. I bury my brother. And about 3 to 4 weeks later, I return to campus. And I remember returning to campus vividly because I returned the week of my birthday. I was turning 21, 21 as a young adult. You're supposed to be embracing it, about to celebrate, go hang out. But I was in such a mood to where I don't want to do anything. Just 3 weeks prior, I had buried my brother, and I didn't know what moving forward at that point looked like in my life. I stand here some years later, going on 14 years later, that I've been able to endure and overcome. But those early days of learning how to move forward were vastly different than what I would have imagined. So when we talk about why I chose the title, I wanted to give you guys something that was organic. I wanted to give you something that was real, that you could feel the emotion. And for me, burying a sibling is something that I pray that none of you have to do, right? Because we live life and we understand that as we get older, our parents are supposed to get older, and we're supposed to bury them before we bury a sibling. However, I tell people now, and I stick by this statement: my brother's death probably was the best thing that happened in my life, and I say it was the best and worst day. And the reason I say that, I see Harley's face, and Harley was kind of shocked when I said that. And I say it in the sense that my brother's death gave me purpose. And that's one of the toughest things that you will have to live with, is that why is the toughest situation in my life the thing that brought purpose out of me? I questioned God. I went through the highs of emotions. And I'll even tell you the first few months after my brother was murdered was not a pretty few months. I spiraled using substances for a little while. I ended up going to jail. But it was those situations that really led me to discovering who I was. The toughest point of it all was also calling my mother from a jail cell after burying her son. And she's like, "Yo, you're going down the wrong track." So having to frame that or figure out, how do I continue to move forward with the void that, will never be filled. And being 36 years old today, I still cry from time to time. I still have those emotions of, why is my brother not here? There are some things in my life that I wish I could have done with him prior to his death, or even right now being able to travel and having the resources that I have. But you accumulate things, you have experiences, but they don't mean as much with certain people not here. So it's been tough. However, moving forward taught me my first point of the evening: how to be resilient. Resiliency is something that I tell young people, I tell my peers, I tell individuals that I work with day in and day out. Resilience is a trait that you don't get by just waking up and persisting through your daily life. There's a situation that has to happen in your life that will alter the way you think, that will alter the way you interact with others, that will often impact how you live your daily life from here on out. Prior to my brother's death, I was as happy-go-lucky as I could be, as friendly, as very outgoing as I could be, and I'm still that way. But I've become a shell of myself in a way of how I communicate and how I interact people and how I trust. I'm very frank and transparent that my brother's death kind of made me a little bit guarded in terms of my actions and how I interact with people going forward. And it's something that I'm working through daily. I go to therapy because those are still emotions that I still have to navigate. And I still have a family that I still have to be there to support. And that's been one of the toughest things, is that when my brother's death occurred, I seen a lot. I seen my mom have to be the parent to move forward. My mom didn't have time to grieve. However, some years later, my mama got in a car wreck, and she's dealt with those emotions, and her emotions have turned from paranoia to psychosis because she didn't have time to grieve and process for her child or for her children because she had to move forward and make sure that we was okay. I've seen my brother's daughter grow up without a father, and there's no void that I could feel for her. And the toughest things that I always have to tell her is, I can love you as if I was your father, but I will never be your father. And there's days where she will call me crying because she misses her father and he's never coming back. So there's moments where I can never explain to her why or how she should move forward because I'm not her father's child. She is. But there's also moments of learning how to move forward and how everybody dealt with it. I had the ability to go back to school and grasp onto something, which is why I'm in the position I am today. And I get the ability to interact with you on a day in and day out basis as students. My sister continued to work. My mom continued to work. However, as a family, we never discussed my brother's death. So we all processed it and dealt with it differently in different forms. So to that point right now, my family is still very torn from an incident that happened almost 15 years ago. Moving forward also taught me the importance that if you don't go forward, you'll never know what the other side looks like. And I think that's very important because there's going to be the situations, as I say, right? But if you don't go forward, you don't know why situations happen. Here's a wrench in the plans of moving forward. It was October 8th, 2020. Childhood best friend, childhood brother that grew up with me and my siblings. He passed away during COVID. So I want you to think about the days, October 8th, 2009, October 8th, 2020, and October 9th, 2009. 11 years and a day apart. The very next day, I'm planning for my brother's death anniversary, but I received a call on October 8th, 2020, that my best friend, my childhood friend, my mom is his mom is my mom, passed away from COVID. Unlike my brother's death, this is the power of moving forward. I had dealt with a death close to me like that before. So spiraling and doing the same things that I did before was not an option. I had to learn from that prior experience. And when you talk about deja vu, understanding the power of moving forward, I had dealt with those emotions before. I knew what death, something like that close to me, looked like before, but it was how I dealt with it this time moving forward that allowed me to continue to push forward. And finding my purpose, working in the collegiate system, it was taking those death and those experiences that I had that really led me to crafting what I do now, which is keeping my promise ink. One thing that I always tell my niece, that I always tell my family, is that we're not the only one that has lost someone close to us. My niece is not the only child that's lost a father. My sister and I are not the only children that have lost a sibling. But it's how you respond and how you interact to make a difference when you have those opportunities. So in the year of 2021, I had the pleasure of giving my TED Talk. And Dr. Jones spoke about it briefly during my bio. It's called Pain, How to Work with Negatives to Make a Positive. And throughout the journey of learning how to live and learning how to move forward, I really took those adverse situations and I began speaking. I began traveling to high schools. I began traveling to different communities. I began traveling to different institutions and sharing my message. And it was important to share my message with students because there's many students in many campuses across our country that are experiencing the same situation. Number one, because we don't have a lot of outlets all the time of how to release these emotions that we've been enduring. Number two is often that you don't know too many people that are facing the same emotions that you're going through or dealing with the same situations. And number three, it's important to have somebody that can help guide you and steer you. Therapy wasn't always an option for me. So when it became apparent that I had internal work that needed to be done, I had a mentor that grabbed me and said, hey, you've got a lot of potential, but you also have some things hindering you and holding you back. So the ability to travel the country and speak with youth and young adults and impact has been a blessing. I started keeping my promise ink as a tool to go into the communities in which I came from and similar communities. So number one, provide resources. Provide resources to support students with, number one, educational access, because there's not a lot of opportunity for certain students depending on your background. And you don't also know that, what you are capable of without someone opening the door versus others being gatekeepers. Number two was providing students with the ability to learn from me and my mistakes, should I say, because I didn't have to spiral on which I did. The one my brother was murdered. However, I didn't have any positive resources around me to reaffirm that it was going to be okay. So I relied on different things. Number three was to provide mentorship. Providing mentorship has allowed me to successfully work with, sponsor, and engage students to continue to be their best selves. I think one of the hardest things about moving forward is that the outlook is sometimes bleak. You're in foreign spaces, you're in different environments, and a lot of times these environments don't represent who you are or where you came from, but yet you still have to persist. So for me, it's been important as I travel to understand that everybody's story is similar, right? Everybody is going through something. Everybody needs someone, but it's a matter of just lending a hand. In the poem by Maya Angelou, to continue to be the laughter, to be the grandeur, and let people see how you move forward. And I think that's where the strengths come from. As I said, that those incidents happened 2020, about 4 years ago, and 2009, 15 years ago. And the pain, the void still exists daily. I wake up, I have a huge picture right beside me to my right. You can't see it. It's a painting of my brother. So it's almost like an altar in my home so that when things are going crazy, I can come in and just ground myself. I can go have a conversation with my angels and know that things will be okay. Moving forward also taught me to take risks. I think one of the biggest things in my brother's death is that he showed me what accountability was. My brother kind of was into some things that, weren't the best. And anytime he got into some trouble, he never cried. He always took it to the chin and said, hey, this is my mistake. I did what I did, and I had to learn from it. My brother taught me to be accountable. And my brother also taught me to take a chance. So when I was in college, in graduate school, I actually chose to pivot. I quit a job working at Toyota. I used to drive a Toyota Camry, and I used to build Toyota Camrys. And I quit. And I went back to graduate school, and that was important in transition into figuring out what it was I wanted to do long term. When I got back to campus, it was a few people that told me no. Can you imagine graduating with a 2.34 and saying, hey, I'm going to go to graduate school? Everybody's like, man, you're insane. But when I look at that 2.34 GPA, that was a 4.0 to me because my brother was killed while I was trying to persist through this degree. So it was, for me, it was important. And working on a college campus after I got through graduate school was the ability to connect with students. Connect day in, day out gave me the skill sets, the resources, and the abilities to make an impact. From there, I transitioned, and I took one of the biggest leaps that I've ever did in May of 2023, and I left the educational system full time. I no longer worked in it, and I bet on myself. And I went from a very comfortable salary, a very stable life, to a full-time entrepreneur life. And I took the leap of faith because the educational system is something that I hold very near and dear to me. But it was time to pivot. And I want you all to realize that you are not held to whatever it is you said you want to do for the remainder of your life. You can pivot, but you also must understand when you do pivot, there are going to be some changes that come through your life, and you must embrace them. My life has looked drastically different than what my stable life has looked like for the last 12 years post graduation coming out of college. Now it's almost if when it's working in the nonprofit sector, fundraising. So my organization is the focal point. My organization gets all my time, all my energy, all my currency, and I like to put it in 3 T's: my time, talent, and my treasure, so that I can continue to make a sustained impact in communities around the world. It's important to me because education was the tool, was the vessel, and I always utilize that vessel. But how I utilize that vessel from without of this system has been a bigger blessing than I could have ever imagined, because I get the ability to travel. I get the ability to work in different communities, in different spaces, but I also get to plant seeds. I get to plant seeds of hope because there's young people that are going through those same situations. I also get to plant seeds of gratitude. To have an attitude of gratitude is to be thankful no matter what. And it's important because as you navigate these situations, you never understand what it means to be thankful. There's always someone that has it worse than what we have it. And you hear that all the time, but you don't know it until you actually see it. And it's been very eye-opening in my line of work because I've seen siblings that have lost multiple siblings. I've seen siblings that are taking care of siblings because they don't have parents. So for me, it's always important to have an attitude of gratitude and understand that my story has been beneficial because I've been able to share. But there's a lot of people that also have stories similar to mine that have been far worse that don't share. And it's important for us as people to share and build community. Community is that thing that is going to keep you going. Community is that thing that has kept me going over these years. And community is something that we all need because we're all going through something. I want to take some time and open the floor up before I dive into the next portion and ask, are there any questions and anybody have any stories that you would like to share or bring something to the light?
I actually was gonna say something.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Mercedes.
It's the 4 years anniversary of my friend being
Mhm.
murdered too. So I no, I don't know exactly what she went through, but I kind of know what she went through. And yesterday, it's just showing me that I've gotten so much better throughout the years. It was super hard, when the situation happened, but 4 years later, it kind of showed me that things do get better. And by pushing through and keeping your loved ones close, you can always get better. And I just wanted to share that because it was so recent to me yesterday. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I enjoyed hearing your story about that though.
Thank you. And thank you for having the courage to share that. And I think you made a valid point is that you never know what it looks like till you continue to move forward. So moving forward isn't easy, as Mercedes said, and the void, the pain is still going to always be there, but it's how you use that pain. And I like to tell people, for me, the pain became motivation. My pain actually became my strength, and it's ironic when you think like, how do you use such a tragic situation to become so strong? But I think it helps you build that fortitude, that fire within that continues to fuel me. And I think one of the biggest things about my situation is that I wanted to stop. I wanted to quit. Right, that was the easy thing to do, but finding the strength to continue to move forward and continue to build on it has given me a life that I never would have imagined. And I don't think this is gonna sound a little crazy, Harley, but I don't think that if my brother wouldn't have passed away, I would be in the situation that I am today. Honestly, I really don't think that. I think that was a point in my life that made me look and say, hey, I have to do something, right? The words that I always tell people, I couldn't let his death be in vain, right? If he would have died and I would have still been on the same nonsense that I was as an undergrad student, it wouldn't have made sense. But really taking that tragic situation and turning it into something has been a blessing. And one of the biggest things that I've gotten from it is the ability to expose. My nieces, my brother's children have had the ability to visit me in Texas multiple times, right? And it's like, hey, if I didn't take the opportunities and continue to move forward, would I still be in Kentucky around the family? Or would I be? But I know that if I didn't move forward, the exposure and the opportunities that I've been able to afford my close friends, my families, along with myself, they wouldn't be non-existent. Mm-mm.
I was actually just gonna make a note on that I know that it sounds like a crazy thing to say, but I understand that feeling of I feel like I wouldn't be the person I am now
Mm-hmm.
if something like that wouldn't have happened because like Mercedes says, I actually lost a very close family friend of mine towards the end of my freshman year, and I had to navigate closing out my finals week after a close almost family member of mine had passed away. So I get that feeling, and it's one of those after that happened, it made me appreciate my own life and how fragile my own life is a lot more. So I get it. I had a big reaction, but I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's life is a funny thing. And I would like to tell you, I don't know you guys' age range, but if I'm thinking traditional college students, 18 to 24, possibly 17, 24, somewhere in there, is that the longer you live, and I'll attest to this, more things are going to happen in your life. Like the longer you live, as there's a quote, the longer you live, life will continue to beat you up. It's about how you respond to it, and I want to encourage all of you, as Harley said, find a community. I think it was Mercedes as well that said, make sure you stay in touch with your loved ones. I think as you grow older, one of the hardest things to do is find a balance between the life you want to live while also staying connected to those close to you. And I think that's a real challenge, especially when you choose to move away from home. I tell people all the time, I've been away from home full time since I was 18 years old. I'll be 36 in October. So for the last 18 years, or should I say 50% of my life, I've been away from my family. Finding the opportunity to go home and spend time and be intentional with that is so important right now at this juncture of my life, as my mom is getting older, my dad is getting older, my grandma is getting older, and being intentional. Like when you go home, I know we love these devices called cell phones. Put them down. Spend that holiday, or if it's the trip with the family that you're like, I got to do this, and your family only takes that trip once a year. Take the trip, because you never know the next time that you'll get to do that. Or the even bigger part is that the next time, how does this trip look different? Right? When you take that family picture and you look 5 years down the road and you realize how many people aren't in this picture anymore because life has happened. Really be intentional and spend time with your folks. That's what I would like to say as well. I'd like to open the floor up to questions as well.
I got a question. So Aaron, I know you shared about like you were a sophomore when this all took place, and that 2 week window that took place. How did you get through that initial impact? Was it counseling? Was it like what helped you get through like that front end piece of it before you actually started to kind of make sense of it and use it as motivation? The tragic situation. So how did you cope with it on the front end?
I'll be honest, it's like this. Our chat right now, there's a room full of peers. When I was in Murray State, my circle there was so tight that when I left campus, I can name the people off. Tony Easley, he played basketball. This man called me every day. Like when I say every day, he's like, "Yo, when you coming back to campus, we got things to do." That first night when it happened, I remember driving to one of my friends' rooms, and we went to his partner's house and we stayed there all night. And when I say so many people from around campus came and just sat with me through the night until my ride got there to come and get me, it was really the village aspect of having good people around me. And I even remember getting back to campus, and I remember being in a communications class. I still remember Professor Mickey Miller, my guy, Com 384. And I was in the back of the classroom one day, and I just started bawling out, crying in the middle of a lecture. And Professor Miller looked and just pointed, and he pointed towards the door. He was like, "Get out, like go." And I remember walking back to my house, which is literally right beside campus during that time. And I was walking down the hill, and one of my buddies was driving to class, and he seen me just wailing. He was like, "Yo, take my car, go home, I'll get it." So for me, that initial impact getting through it, it was the people that I kept around me. As you can see, it's my voice is cracking a little bit because I still have raw emotions for it, but the people that I kept around me really made the difference in my life, for real.
That's major. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. I would say as well, it wasn't immediately that I went to counseling or therapy. It took some years, and the reason it took years to do that is because I came from a community where therapy wasn't something that was really spoke upon, right? People from my community, my house, my family, I had never seen anyone go to therapy, but it was something that I knew. Like I had a mean streak, and I had a lot of anger built up inside because I had never learned how to express it. And when I finally did, and it was when I went to jail, that was like, man, I got to do something different. right? I spent the last 2.5 years of my college career on probation. I couldn't get a job. And it was like, man, how do I navigate this process with the expectations of the probation system, trying to figure out how do I get a job? So during that time, I was still doing things that probably could have got me in more trouble just because it was like I couldn't get a job. But it was my attorney who actually helped me through that process of finding a therapist and learning how to negotiate, not negotiate, how to navigate those feelings, should I say.
Any other questions from the room?
So this is a question, but I can definitely relate to surrounding yourself with people. Also, if you hear a squeaky toy in the background, it is my dog, and she's severely sick, and the only thing that keeps her comfortable is a squeaky toy.
It's okay.
But so I experienced when I was a freshman in high school, I experienced one of my best friends dying. And then my high school became known as a national suicide school. So that was really hard to grow up around, especially within your teen years, as you know, you're becoming an adult and you're learning how to work through the world, especially high school at that point. And inside of high school, with having being a national suicide school, I also lost two very, very close friends of mine within 3 months of each other. You know, and it definitely makes you look at the world around you, and especially losing those friends and those people that I was close with, it makes you realize that, you know, your friends aren't just your friends are also your family, and the people that you surround yourself with makes such a huge influence on who you are and how you are as a person. Like, I know for a fact I would not be who I am today without those people, you know, and without the people that I have now. So like I definitely, a support system is 100% goal oriented. Like, that is something definitely to have.
Absolutely, absolutely. I encourage everyone in here to find your village. Right, your village is somewhere on the campus of Slippery Rock. Your village is somewhere around the community of Slippery Rock. Find your village and build with those people. Take time and get to know people. Whether it's in the cafeteria, you're eating, and someone's sitting across from you that you don't know. Spend time, find a village, and find your tribe, because your tribe will pour into you and ensure that you are able to continue. Your tribe will also hold you accountable, which I think is important as you go through the collegiate cycle. But your village is there to uplift you. Your village is there to help you get through those tough situations. And I promise you, as I said earlier, the longer you continue to live, life is going to beat you up. Life is going to happen. You're going to have to learn how to navigate those feelings, those emotions, those situations that you didn't expect to happen. And the toughest thing is that by the time some of these situations happen, you'll be in the working world full time. So you'll have to navigate, how do I continue as a professional, right? You may have a family at that time. How do I continue as a family? It's one of those things that life is to be cherished, but I'll also tell you, life is to be lived. Don't allow the tough situations in our life to not allow us to continue to live. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that I've taken from my situation personally, is that the first few years after my brother's death were, very bleak. But I'll tell you, the last 6 to 7 years, I've lived one of the best lives that I ever could have imagined. But if I didn't go forward, as I told you, I wouldn't have these abilities. So don't allow where you are to determine where you head, right? Those situations are going to happen. And a lot of times, I want to tell you, the situations are out of our control. We don't have any impact on them. Things are going to happen that you have no influence on. What you have influence on is how you respond to these situations and how you decide you want to move forward. Those are the biggest things and biggest abilities and biggest choices that we have, is how you respond and how you choose to move forward.
Any more questions from the floor? Stories, questions? We're having a great conversation.
And if you want to ask questions as well, they don't have to be specifically about that story. As I said, I've worked on a collegiate campus for about 10 years. It could be about, life after college, things like that. I want to be a vessel. I want to be a resource for you as well.
Questions. Like to let the silence linger for a little bit. But Aaron, can you talk to us a little bit about that? As you talk about your time in the collegiate space, in relation to your company, talk to us a little bit about that correlation, how you brought yourself and bring yourself to that current space and that collegiate space.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things that I took from the collegiate spaces, I worked from anywhere from admissions orientation. I was a admissions counselor. I was a travel recruiter for some years. I worked at student success. I was a student success coach. And I also worked on the career side, helping students navigate the space of finding what's next after college. I also taught at the collegiate level. One of the biggest things that I brought and I bring to every space is that I want everybody to feel included. I am the person that's going to include. We're going to be in a class or a space, a group. You're going to know the people that you're sitting beside. That's one of the biggest things that I loved about working in the collegiate cycle is that I had the ability to connect people. One of my unique experiences in education, I'll speak directly to it, was at Purdue University. I was a student success coach. And if anybody knows anything about Purdue, it's a really, really high achieving school. And when I say high achieving, you have students that when you get that first grade in engineering, if it's not an A, some of our students didn't know how to cope. Suicide was a huge thing at Purdue as well. So for me, it was getting in a classroom and allowing students to see that you're much more similar than you are different. Building those commonalities, building those relationships. I was a person when you came in class, you knew if you sat in this seat yesterday beside the same person the day before, you knew that we were going to play musical chairs and you were going to get to know your peers. And I think that's one of the most simplest things that we can do as professionals. But it was also one of the most gifted things because when they left my COM 101 in the class that I taught was public speaking COM 181. When students left my class, they were number one equipped for speaking, but they also knew that when I go to my next classes, I'm going to find someone in this class that I don't know, someone that I didn't have a relationship to before, and they were able to build new relationships. I think working in the collegiate cycle is also the ability to bring my authentic self. So much like my students, my hair changed from time to time. I grew it out. I would cut it. I was also very authentic in my approach. I love tennis shoes. So every Friday, my students knew I was going to have a new pair of shoes on. It was never the same pair of shoes. And it was those small things that allowed me to build relationships that are actually still sustainable. I created a scholarship at a school that I was once at, and students that had received a scholarship, they're still connected to me till this day. I've been invited to weddings, baby showers, and things of that nature. So the ability just to impact and build relationships, build rapport has been something that I'll take forever and cherish with me from the educational cycle.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Once again, I'll open the floor to any questions that you have.
I want to ask the students a question.
You got it.
School looks much different than it does than when I was in school, and especially post-COVID. What are some of the biggest challenges that you face as a student now, as a student?
I think coming back, like COVID was hit my junior year, and then my senior year was almost completely online. So coming to college when COVID was still um around, it was definitely hard to make friends my freshman year. Um, and then kind of continuing from that, I just always felt a disconnect because I felt like I didn't make friends freshman year, so then everyone else already had their friends by sophomore year. So that definitely took a lot of time. And I'm in my junior year now, and I think I finally found my group of people, but it definitely took putting myself out there and kind of getting over that initial thought that like, oh, everyone already made their friends. So that was definitely something that was difficult for me.
How have you seen your campus try to engage and build those connections, if you don't mind me asking?
I think the most helpful thing for me was like going to the events that they put on at campus and just meeting other people. We like our SGA and UPB put on a lot of events for the whole campus, which is super helpful. And we also do like an involvement fair where you can meet all the different clubs and organizations. And that's kind of what I went to, and I found the clubs that I connected with. And that kind of ultimately led me to finding my group of people. And I think without that, I don't know if I would have found my right people. So all of those events I think are super helpful.
Gotcha. Everybody in here, if you've joined a club or organization or you're connected around campus, can you like raise your hand on here? I forget how you do that. Can you raise your hand? Okay. If you haven't, I would challenge you. Find an organization, find a club, and if there's not one, try to create it. Right? Leave your mark on the campus so that I always tell students, leave your mark so that when the next student comes, they have an opportunity that you didn't have. And I think that's important to continue to push the collegiate cycle forward, is creating new opportunities. And as I said, it looks much different than when I was in school, right? So you guys now have the ability to create even more, even easier. So I would challenge you to do that. And if you're not in a leadership position, I'm going to challenge you to seek leadership opportunities. And the reason I say that is because when you graduate and it's time to seek those professional opportunities, if you have some type of leadership experience on your campus, it's going to speak volumes. And then one thing I also want to challenge you, if you have the ability to study abroad, I didn't do it, and I've traveled so much internationally since graduating college, but it comes at a tremendous cost. If you have the ability to study abroad, do it and do it now. And the reason I say that is because when you go into the professional world and you're working 40 hours a week, you're going to have to go talk to somebody and say, hey, I want a week or two off. I want to go travel abroad. And they're going to look at you and ask, first things, do you have enough PTO to cover the time? While you're in school, if you can travel abroad, you're going to study, you're going to take classes abroad, and you're going to get some immersion experiences that are going to live with you for the rest of your life. So if you have that ability and it's afforded to you, please, please, please do it. And it's an invaluable experience that will help you grow as a person as well. Dr. Jones, did you have the ability to study abroad?
I did. I'm actually I'm glad you brought that up. I had the opportunity to do it wasn't necessarily study abroad, but I did several immersion trips.
Okay.
So we talked about that opportunity to immerse in the space. I went to El Salvador for several weeks. It was a what is it called when you go in service trip? I don't know why I blanked on that.
A mission.
Yeah, it was a service trip. Mission
Okay.
is that single-handedly changed the way that I interact with people. Just from meeting people, I think by the standards of us in America, we would say these people don't have close to anything as far as land and property. The happiest people that I've ever met. It just changed the perspective on how I view things, and it took the value away from those things for me, because I saw that happiness was not an object. It was not something you can purchase. It's not something that you hold in your hand. Like, it's something that you live and you experience. Mind you, it was probably 117 degrees every day. Nobody's complaining. Everybody's smiling. The community, the village that we were in, there were probably 400 people in the village. Maybe 3 people had vehicles. But how that worked is like literally, and we were doing service work at the time. So, I mean, we had 2 vehicles in the space. So now there's 4 to 5 vehicles that are in this whole community. But the understanding was, if you're riding up the street, which everyone had pickup trucks, and they had these huge like poles on the back of their pickup trucks. I didn't really understand what the purpose of that was, but literally, they drive slow. If you're riding down the street and somebody needs a ride, they would literally just jump on the back of your pickup truck. So the poles were there so they can grab on and like swing up to the truck bed. And that was just normal. And that's how they helped each other as a community. That if I'm going down the road and you need a ride, just jump on. It wasn't a conversation. It just was normal. I have experiences like that, too many of those just in that space. And I had the opportunity to teach in Qatar, Qatar, depending on how you pronounce it, which was life-changing as well. But definitely my trip to El Salvador reshaped who I am as a person. So I highly encourage, if you have those type of opportunities, to really immerse yourself in a different space, learn and live in a different culture. I would be willing to bet it will be life-changing. Absolutely.
Also, for my upperclassmen that are almost to the finish line, create a plan. Create a plan, because when you graduate, life happens and it happens quick. Create a plan. Start to make contacts now. Don't wait until the last minute. I know you hear that all the time, but really have you a tangible plan so that you can go back and look at it, make some changes if need be, but know where you want to go, aim for it, and find the people that are going to help you get there. It's simple as that.
Absolutely. Any final questions before we wrap things up? Final thoughts, final questions?
Final thoughts. As life happens, learn how to go with it, right? Don't push against it. Don't try to force things. Go with the flow and allow it to happen. Allow that experience in your life, because for the better or for the worse, it's going to happen. Allow that experience to happen, go through it, navigate those emotions, seek the resources that you need to continue to persist, but don't let it change your heart. Don't let it change the good person that you are. Don't let it be a weight, right? There's going to be burdens in your life, and they're going to come, they're going to go, but continue to push through. To my young people that have lost people close to them, I send you my care, because I know what those emotions feel like, and I hope that you navigate those properly. I hope that you seek the resources that you need to continue to persist, and I challenge you to continue to grow, continue to aspire to seek higher. Don't lower the bar for anyone or anything. Place your responsibility, place your care with you, but also challenge yourself to execute and challenge yourself to be better day in and day out.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for being here per usual. Be on the lookout for our next speaker series, as we should have 2 more coming up this semester. Always great to have you all here. Always great conversation. Thank you again to Mr. Aaron Harris for being my presenter and sharing his personal and touching and also inspiring stories of your life. So thank you all, and hopefully I will see you all around campus.
Thank you guys. Have a good evening.